This video is made possible by Dashlane. Download Dashlane for free if you never want to lose another password again at the link in the description. Tokyo, December 10th, 1968. It was pouring rain.
Not really ripping it off, Mickey, I don't think,
Trust
just
Bank
inspired
was
by.
on edge. Someone had threatened his life and those around him over the past few months. Just 4 days prior, a letter, one of recent many, was sent to his personal residence demanding 300 million yen or his house would be blown up with dynamite.
Holy
shit.
shit.
The letter was made up of characters cut out
Some
and
Looney
pasted
Tunes shit
from movie magazines. Police were notified, and indeed they kept a close eye on the bank and his home, though this did not ease the mind of the bank manager, who shared his concerns with his branch employees. Now, of course, this is Japan, and work is work. The show must go on. With this in mind, the bank manager went on with his duties, sending 4 of his employees to the nearby Toshiba factory to make a scheduled drop. So off they went, taking the company car. But not long after leaving the bank, the 4 heard police sirens approaching. At that very moment, they happened to be next to a prison of all places. A police officer screeched to a halt in front of the car and frantically got off his motorcycle to warn them. The branch manager's home had just been blown up. People were injured.
Wait,
some
really?
Presumably worse. Despite police monitoring the locations, the perpetrator was still able to carry out...
Wait, so he actually successfully blew this shit up?
Additional threats were made. The bank in particular was now a target, and branch employees were at risk, especially those who had left the bank earlier to carry out bank duties.
Why do you keep spamming Jim Browning? I'm literally in the middle of watching something. What the fuck is wrong with you?
The officer got down underneath to check the car, but before he could do a proper search, an employee started noticing smoke and flames emerging from the vehicle. Fearing the car was about to explode, the officer desperately tried to roll out of the way. Everyone ran as fast as they could to safety, retreating behind the prison walls. They waited and waited for the explosion, but there was no explosion. They looked back.
Oh, so they were
fooled. The company
fooled.
car was gone. The police officer was gone. Had he moved the car to safety? Confused, they called the Nihon Trust Bank to find out what was going on. To their relief, the bank manager answered. He was alive and well. In fact, everything was fine there. The bank manager's home was never blown up. As the adrenaline wore off, it finally dawned on them what had happened. This was the moment the perpetrator had been setting up the past few months. Disguised as a police officer, he had now gotten away with what was to be the bonus payments of 523 Toshiba employees. The stolen amount totaled to 300 million yen or $6 million.
Not
exactly
bad!
He had asked for. On the ground, they found various items left behind, including a warning flare that the officer must have ignited while under the car to mimic dynamite. A reported 120 pieces of evidence was left behind at the crime scene, which is a lot and would normally be beneficial, but this was purposely done to mislead.
Whoa!
This worked.
What the fuck? This is nuts!
The case remains unsolved. Some say
turns out he trimmed his pubic hair to live DNA, but it wasn't his pubic hair.
No loss of life, no blood spilled.
A red herring.
The plan meticulously carried out by a single person, and in the end, the money taken. But there are many ways a bank heist can be great. There are many ways it can be notable. Take the case on May 15th, 2016. At around 5 a.m. in the early hours,
oh right, Phoenix Jones, I forgot to do that.
From an ATM
I like Phoenix
from
Jones.
The Tokyo 7-Eleven. The amount was 100,000 yen, about $880, which was the cash limit. Now, this doesn't seem too bad, but try repeating this 14,000 times across Japan in the span of just 2 hours, because that is exactly what happened. In total, 1.4 billion yen, about $13 million, was taken from ATMs alone. And this wasn't done electronically.
What?
It was done in person. Sure, it had to be some sort of a large, coordinated group, but the staggering number of transactions in a 2-hour frame made even this seem questionable. Compared to other notable cases, the largest known recorded number of participants to have been involved in a single heist wouldn't have been able to pull this off either, unless they had superpowers. Involving an even larger team would presumably be unwise, as there'd be too many chefs in the kitchen. Now, after police completed their painstaking process of checking security footage of each 7-Eleven store, and yeah, it was only 7-Eleven's hit, they found their answer. In this particular case, the more chefs the better. It wasn't a team of 50 or 100 or even 200. it was 600 people. 600 people pulling off a sophisticated, highly coordinated heist using fake credit cards. Quite the contrast from the single perpetrator of our first heist.
Toto
Not
and
surprisingly,
Kaze.
most people have surmised with this many active participants, there must have been links to a large crime organization. But as of today, despite the numbers, no one of note has been caught. Now, here's a quick one. Kobe, August 7th, 1990.
How in the fuck can you not catch a single person in that if you knew exactly what places they were hitting with security cameras? How does that happen?
The story so unique is
how do you fuck that up?
10 days after the heist, the bank, still reeling from the events, received a note from the robbers. The note read, "Thank you very much for the bonus. We can now live on this loot for the rest of our lives." It was a sincere message of gratitude. Yeah, we all know the reputation Japanese people have for being polite, but this took it to another level. So the last three cases involved plans being executed perfectly with no loss of life. But not the case with the next one. We're going way back. January 26, 1948. Again in Tokyo, a man in his 40s walked into a branch of the Imperial Bank just before closing time. 16 people were inside, including customers and bank workers. He got everyone's attention and explained he was a government health inspector sent by the US occupation authorities. Remember, this was post-war Tokyo, still under US occupation. The man stated there was a sudden outbreak of dysentery in the area, and he was to carry out inoculations. In post-war Tokyo, the disease was a legitimate threat, so no one really doubted him. Add to the fact that the man was wearing an official government armband. He gave all 16 people a pill and a few drops of liquid, which they quickly drank. Now, it wasn't long until they fell, one by one, in agony. With everyone incapacitated, the so-called health inspector grabbed all the money he could find and calmly left. 12 of the 16 people would later be confirmed dead, including a young child. The solution they drank was a cyanide solution. This was a ruthless way to go about a heist. But what made this even more strange was that the man left behind a business card. He left it at the scene. The card was marked with the name Shigeru Matsui, apparently from the Department of Disease Prevention, which does make sense since he was pretending to be a health official. But Shigeru Matsui turned out to be a real person who actually worked for the Department of Disease Prevention. Not surprisingly,
he killed him and took the
Matsui
shit.
Was cleared. He was not the robber. He had several alibis. But he told police he had exchanged business cards with 593.
How would he know that
Japanese
number?
People have the habit of exchanging business cards with personal details, so this was helpful.
I guess you could just look at every business card.
593 suspects. Over time, they were able to whittle down this number to just 8 cards, 8 suspects, one of which was a man named Sadamichi Hirasawa, a Japanese painter. When Hirasawa was questioned and asked to produce the card of Shigeru Matsui's, which he should have had, he could not. He claimed it must have been in his wallet, which was stolen the other day. He was a victim of pickpocketing. Police had a feeling they knew exactly where the card was.
He could have just lost the card. I don't keep business cards.
When police looked into his history, they found 4 previous cases of bank fraud. When they searched his possession, they found a similar amount of money to that stolen from the bank. Hirasawa suspiciously refused to divulge how he got this money. Finally, when his face was shown to eyewitnesses, they immediately identified him as the poisoner. Upon further interrogation,
that was easy.
Hirasawa
Good work.
Confessed. He was arrested for the robbery and the murders, and in 1950, he was given the death penalty. He was sent to death row to await execution by hanging. Case closed. Or is it? Because after the trial, some had doubts whether Sadamichi Hirasawa was indeed the perpetrator. Everything mentioned, circumstantial. In fact, it was revealed his confession was viciously beaten out of him.
Thanks to Tier 1 Supreme in the Prime
There was
Yoni.
only 2 of the eyewitnesses who identified him as the criminal. Perhaps he was telling the truth. Perhaps he was really a victim of pickpocketing, as he claimed. The unexplained origin of the money in his possession was also thought by some to be from his side business of drawing pornographic pictures. Revealing this truth to police and to the public would have been detrimental to his reputation as an artist. There was also no way
so he was a
to
hentai artist?
obtain the ingredients for what turned out to be a military-grade cyanide solution used in the robbery. Interestingly, some have claimed that the true culprit was actually a former member of the notorious Unit 731, a covert biological and chemical warfare research and development unit of the Imperial Japanese Army that undertook lethal human experimentation during wartime. If so, this would explain the accessibility to the poison. The Minister of Justice himself doubted Hirasawa's guilt, and so never signed the death warrant. This opinion was shared by successive ministers of justice, so the death sentence was never actually carried out. And so Hirasawa sat in prison on death row for the next 32 years of his life, one of the longest tenures ever on death row. And on May 10th, 1987, he caught pneumonia and died in a prison hospital. Despite the verdict, the case was never truly put to rest, and many people felt that the true culprit, all those years ago, would have been within grasp if only the focus was on the right person. This brutality
it does seem very odd that a painter would come up with that.
A new type of heist. January 25th, 2000.
That seems extremely hardcore.
Cybercrime. The Tokyo-based exchange Coincheck, one of the most prominent virtual currency exchanges in Asia, was the
Prime. Just Kier and
biggest
some
cryptocurrency
sauce.
heist in history.
What do you mean water?
At 2:57 a.m., using overseas servers, hackers, disguising themselves as authorized users, were able to enter the system. They remained undetected for the next 8.5 hours, stealing 58 billion yen worth of the cryptocurrency NEM, which is about $530 million. Then they were gone. This incident became an embarrassment to the Japanese government, who had been trying to make Tokyo the global center for cryptocurrency. Coincheck revealed they failed to implement the required extra layer of security, but even worse, the stolen currency had been kept online in a hot wallet, rather than in a much more secure offline storage facility known as a cold wallet. This is similar to if a convenience store kept significantly large amounts in a cash register, instead of an off-premise bank vault. Now, one of the stranger aspects of the heist is that the stolen virtual funds were able to be traced online, because transactions for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are all public. And so the $530 million worth was eventually traced back to 11 specific addresses. But the identities of those sending and receiving the money, unfortunately, remained anonymous. Indeed, no one yet has been caught, but the developers of NEM were able to label the 11 addresses with specific warning tags for all to see. They also set up a tracking tool to automatically reject exchanges involving the stolen funds. Of course, the most frustrating part of this is that it all easily could have been avoided if Coincheck just added that extra layer of security. And really, it's not just big companies. Most people today are
I imagine they'd already cashed it out like that same day.
Same password for every account
they
have.
couldn't have.
Now, if this is you, congratulations. You have bad habits just like me, but that's okay. I'm segueing here because Dashlane makes keeping track of all your passwords.
I see. We can watch this. Well, let me see.
I'm Kento Bento. This video is made possible by Dashlane. Download Dashlane for free if you never want to lose another password again, at the link in the description. Bangladesh, February 7th, 2016. The director of the Bangladesh
see how the
Central Bank
setup is.
got off the elevator on the 9th floor and headed to the back office of the accounts and budgeting department. This was the most restricted part of the building. He was there to deal with a problem, one that had been plaguing the office the last few days. You see,
how do we get rid of $1 billion?
This was kind of a big deal. It was causing a real disruption. The automated printer, which was hooked up to the bank's software, was supposed to work round the clock, 24/7, printing out the bank's transaction reports in real time. Due to this technical glitch, however, the printer tray remained empty. Much of the day was spent trying to fix the issue, and after a great deal of effort, there was success. They were able to restart the printer. And so the backlog of transaction
But they had $1 billion
started
deficit?
rolling out, one by one. Now, it soon became apparent that something wasn't quite right. There were more statements than expected. When they took a closer look, they found 35 suspicious payment orders for what were ridiculously large sums of money, having supposedly been transferred from the Bangladesh bank's own account to various other accounts in other countries. Certainly, no one from their bank authorized it, and the swift security system in place was
Prime Elite.
unreachable. As the directors
Thanks,
sifted
Ash.
through the suspicious transfer requests, the true scale of the situation started.
Yeah, I have
to
to remove them, done.
The transfers totaled to almost $1 billion US, an absurd amount, a significant chunk of the nation's reserves. Where were they going? Who was responsible? Panic ensued as the workers scrambled to stop the payments, but it was likely too late. The ill-timed printer malfunction from earlier had caused an unfortunate delay in their response. It seemed Bangladesh had just lost $1 billion.
Oh, shit.
This happened in February 2016, but what led to this moment actually started 9 months earlier. Philippines, May 2000.
Why does this sounds kind of familiar. I might have read about this.
A group of men entered the Jupiter Street branch of the RCBC Bank, just outside Manila, and opened 4 bank accounts with just $500 inside. The men then left, never to return, with their accounts left seemingly abandoned.
Thanks
Now,
to Prime
returning to
Bad at
Bangladesh,
Games.
The country was becoming one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Their central bank sat in the financial district of the capital, Dhaka, a chaotic city with almost 20 million people. But despite all this rapid growth, it was a nation that could ill afford to lose $1 billion of taxpayers' money.
There's the resub major in the prime sway.
January 2016, a month before the incident, an employee at the Bangladesh bank was checking his mail at work. Now, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. He thought nothing of it. But he went home that night not realizing he had just set in motion events that would soon shock the nation's banking system.
That idiot! That fucking moron!
He had inadvertently clicked on an infected email.
No!
One that immediately began installing a malicious program on the central bank's computer systems. This malware would allow intruders to enter the network and gain access to the inner workings of the Bangladesh bank. Hiding in plain sight, these intruders could now spy on workers and study the bank's operational procedures. And that's what they did. It was now just a matter of...
So how the fuck does North Korea know how to do all this shit, but they can't make a single thing that gets into the air?
Bangladesh tends to be on a Friday and Saturday instead of a Saturday and Sunday. The intruders once again entered the system. But it was for the last time, because this was what it was all leading to. Now, they were in the system, but manipulating international money transfers was a whole nother thing.
Thanks to the Prime, Mingo,
the network, enabling financial transactions to be sent in a secure and reliable way, using military-grade security designed to be unbreachable. Just to be clear, SWIFT does not facilitate the transfer of actual funds, but rather it sends trusted payment orders between accounts, which the banks can act on. This is the standard in international banking, and this is partly why bank hackers usually focus on stealing the login credentials of individual bank account holders rather than focusing on the banks themselves. But it wasn't the case here, not for this group. Their target was the institution.
Thanks to the bits,
Using the bank's legitimate SWIFT credentials that they collected from the malware, they were able to take control of the SWIFT terminals, as if they were legitimate bank employees. Yes, SWIFT itself is safe and secure, but the banks using them first needed to be responsible for their individual cybersecurity on their end. If their security happened to be lacking, as in the case with many developing nations, SWIFT could actually be used against them. And that's what was happening here. 35 phony transfer requests totaling $951 million was by now being sent via SWIFT to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. New York. Well, because the Bangladesh bank owns an account there with billions of...
well, I'm still gonna let it ride. If there's anything I start to recognize, we can stop, but I'm not sure.
...from the wintry cold. But after a few minutes of picking, he had success, and his cell door swung open.
Yeah,
but
barefoot bandit days, fuck yeah.
Because there were more locked doors ahead. He knew he only had a few minutes left before the guards would return, so he wasted no time attempting to pick his way through the remaining security doors.
No advice, Alex, just to keep yourself distracted. It'll get easier. Sorry to hear that, man.
The bad news was that he was only halfway to freedom. You see, he was still well within the search perimeter, which meant at any moment the alarm could go off and he'd still be caught. At 5:45 a.m., the guards returned, peering into his cell, and this is what they saw. Shiratori sound asleep in his futon bed. But of course, what they didn't realize was that they were looking at something else. A pile of loose floorboards underneath his duvet designed to trick them.
Outsmarted.
Next morning,
Fuck yeah.
that they finally discovered the truth, and the alarm was sounded.
They get a duvet in that prison?
Shiratori was long gone. Now, he had escaped.
Thanks to Prime,
but if you've watched any of our previous videos, you'll know that things aren't always as
Congrats on the huge job, Parskit. I'm really glad to hear that,
aka the prison
break magician,
it.
Hope you enjoy it.
This was only the beginning. 3 days later, he was caught trying to steal supplies from a hospital, and just like that, he was back in the slammer. But this time, for his escape attempt, he was sentenced to life in prison. He would never be with his family again, his wife and his daughter, and all the months of planning had led to just 3 days of freedom. It now seemed he'd be locked up for a very long time.
Until he developed superpowers.
In 1942, in the midst of the Second World War, Shiratori found himself transferred to Akita prison in Akita City. There, the guards treated him even worse than in
Tier 1 Rothgar.
They had heard about Shiratori's previous escape and were determined to make an example out of him. They wanted to make sure he would never escape again. Along with the usual beatings, he was forced to partake in extreme manual labor, made to sleep on the hard concrete floor in the severe winter cold, and placed into solitary confinement for extended periods of time. Now, this was a specially made solitary confinement cell, which was very small and had a very high ceiling, with the walls covered with copper sheets so smooth that it was impossible to grip. In addition, there was almost no sunlight even in the daytime, with the only window light coming from a small sealed skylight high above. This was a room designed to keep escape artists from escaping, and if that wasn't enough, the guards also made sure that Shiratori was handcuffed at all times. Now, despite the constant abuse, one of the guards, Kobayashi, in fact the head guard, took pity on him. Kobayashi never laid a finger and even seemed to check up on him from time to time, concerned
just to make
for his
out.
well-being.
So
Perhaps
sweet.
this made life a little more bearable for Shiratori, and it might have even been what kept his will alive all the way to the night of June 15th.
Thanks. Appreciate
It
it,
was a
mess.
stormy night,
And yeah, we'll do more
Shiratori was
Yakuza
in the middle
soon-ish.
of one of his extended stays in solitary confinement. At around midnight, one of the guards peered into his cell and couldn't believe his eyes. He opened the cell door and looked around in astonishment, as Yoshie Shiratori had vanished into thin air. All that was left was his handcuffs. So how did he do it?
He actually
Well,
just straight
there were a
vanished.
few assumptions the guards made that did not apply to Shiratori. For one, handcuffs simply didn't work on him. Shiratori was actually a master of getting out of handcuffs, and in fact had several methods to choose from. Here, he decided to go with the familiar lock-picking method, but he really could have gone with any of them. He had thoroughly scoured his
Thanks for
surroundings
5
to find
gift subs, Liam. Thank you
anything
for the
that could be
generosity
of
tonight,
use
man.
in an escape. And
Thanks
just
for
like in
resubs, Zay
Aomori
and
prison,
DKD.
he was able to uncover a loose bit of wire. Perhaps it was from one of the items Kobayashi brought him, but this wasn't clear. After freeing himself from the cuffs, he placed his palms and soles of his feet on the smooth copper sheets and started climbing the unclimbable wall. It turned out Shiratori was also an expert climber.
So this
with
guy
an
just had
uncanny
maxed
ability
out fucking
to scale
stats.
like a lizard. Once he reached the skylight above, he noticed that, yes, the window was sealed, but the wooden framing around it was starting to rot. And so thereafter, night after night, when the guards weren't looking, he'd climb the copper walls and loosen the framing, bit by bit. Afterwards, he'd climb back down and place the handcuffs back on.
Oh shit!
After a couple months, the window finally came loose, and from there,
That's
it was
so
just
smart.
about choosing the right day. He waited until a particular stormy night, so the guards wouldn't hear the footsteps
Thanks
on
to
the roof.
Prime,
And
Sax, and
that
resub
was it.
sound tag.
He had
Fuck yeah,
escaped
man.
from
Hope you're doing
prison
well.
again. Now this time, he wouldn't be caught, or at least not in the way you'd expect. 3 months later, on
He became
September
the
18th,
warden of
the
that
head guard,
prison.
Kobayashi was at home when he heard a knock on the door. To his surprise, it was the fugitive Yoshie Shiratori, unkempt and disheveled, and he needed a favor. A stunned Kobayashi took him in and fed him, all the while listening to what he had to say. Shiratori explained that he didn't actually mind being in prison, and that the only reason he escaped twice now was due to the tremendous abuse he suffered at the hands of the sadistic guards.
Makes sense.
Kobayashi, however, was the only one who treated him with any amount of respect, and so he felt he owed it to him to let him in on his grand plan. Now, this plan involved Shiratori willingly, yes, handing himself over to the Justice Department, where he could then personally make a case for how corrupt and barbaric the Japanese prison system was, and there needed to be reform. He wanted
Why?
to campaign for change, and in the process, gain his legal freedom through a
Thanks to
civil
5
lawsuit.
subs again, Liam.
He felt this
Goddamn,
was the
man.
only way he could
And yeah,
realistically
2
end
people
up
limit.
with his family. This, of course, was
And maybe
a super
Grapey.
ambitious plan, and as a fugitive on the run, he was well aware of it.
And we watched
which
that a
is
while
why
ago,
he needed
Sloth.
Kobayashi, the
That's a great video.
well-respected head guard of Akita Prison, to vouch for him, to strengthen his credibility. As the only guard who ever treated him right, he had a feeling Kobayashi would do the right thing. Minutes later, while Shiratori was in the toilet, Kobayashi called the police. Maybe not a great plan. Just like that, Shiratori was back in prison.
Yeah,
And
awful
this time,
plan.
He vowed never to trust an officer of the law again. For the second escape, the courthouse added 3 more years to his life sentence. Now, Shiratori requested to be sent to a Tokyo prison, where the weather was warmer, as he couldn't stand the cold in the northern prisons. His previous stints had weakened him severely, but he was denied his request. Instead, the judge sentenced him to the infamous Abashiri prison in Hokkaido, the northernmost prison in Japan.
Good
no
God.
man had ever escaped from this wintry hellhole of a prison. It was now 1943, and the cold was unbearable in Abashiri, as the temperature in the cells was below freezing point.
Thanks to
Whenever
Yusuf Dennis.
inmates received their prison food, the miso soup and soy sauce would often freeze up. In this temperature, a handcuffed Shiratori was thrown into an open cell in summer clothing, and he immediately felt the paralyzing sting of cold air. Perhaps in a fit of desperation,
Thanks,
he tried
Rusabrabi.
to force himself past the guards, but they were able to push him back and beat him down. An enraged and defiant Shiratori stood back up and vowed that he would escape from Abashiri prison, like he's always done, and that there was nothing they could do about it. In fact, he
They could
claimed
kill him.
there was little point even putting handcuffs on him,
No,
as
but
he'd always
I'll
find a
come say
way
goodnight in a
to
sec.
break free. If not by lockpicking, then, well, this. He then proceeded to rip apart the chain
What?
of his handcuffs, to the horror of the guards. It turned out Shiratori had another special ability. Aside from his outstanding climbing abilities, he also possessed incredible strength.
This is a
Almost
lie.
superhuman
Straight up, this is
Back
made
in
up.
Akita prison, he could have broken free of the cuffs the
Exit
physical
Prime
way
memes.
if he didn't have to put them back on. Now, this was impressive,
I'm sorry I didn't see
but
that,
it
Tam,
wasn't
but yeah,
so
I did
smart
watch
to
the
lay
trailer.
his cards on the table like that, as the guards were starting to build an escape profile on him. They knew he had lock-picking abilities, lizard-like climbing
Thanks to Prime
abilities,
Martin.
and now almost superhuman strength.
No,
And so
this
they
is a
set out
lie.
to devise the ultimate escape-proof cell, one that was sure to be Shiratori-proof. And they came up with this. The new cell had steel fixtures with a low chance of rot. Any openings, even the bars removed, were made smaller than his
He can
body,
also
meaning
run
there
at
was no
90
way
miles
he
per
could
hour.
physically fit
Yeah.
through. He had specially made solid iron handcuffs.
He utilizes the
that tied
speed
his
force to
hands
turn
behind
back
his
the clock.
and leg cuffs that made him barely able to stand. These cuffs weighed 20 kgs each and had no keyhole, which meant they could not be lockpicked. And the only way they could be removed was by two metalwork specialists who would come once every few weeks to remove them in an arduous 2-hour process. It was at this point, and only this point, that he could even take a bath. And he certainly needed one, as weeks of being shackled up with no movement meant his cuff wounds were infested with maggots. On top of that, and as cold as it had already been, it wasn't even peak winter yet. Any strength he would have left would surely be nullified by
He's
the
the Prime
upcoming
Clicky,
freeze. Though
Martin,
just in
and
case,
the
they
Tier 1
still made sure to
Umbrella
cut his already
girl,
meager
and the
food
Tier 1
portions in half.
one
And
deal.
so that was it. Even for Shiratori, this was too much.
Maybe
As winter
chainsaw.
came, he succumbed to his fate. Every day, the guards would slide his meal through the opening, and he'd be forced to grovel like a dog. His hand and leg cuffs made every action awkward and uncomfortable, with even sleeping being a pain. There was no doubt life in Abashiri prison was absolute torture. Now, fast
Thanks to
forward,
Austin and
Shiratori
Resub Bell.
was somehow able to survive through the winter, and spring was coming. This meant he was starting to get his strength back. But still, what could he really do? He was literally in a bind. Months passed and, well, nothing seemed to happen. Then one night, in August, a guard in his office was doing some paperwork when he heard some shuffling on the roof. He wasn't sure what it was, but he decided to check on the prisoners. As he looked inside Shiratori's inescapable cell, he was stunned. The futon bed and
There was
prison
5
garments
women
were
in
neatly
there,
folded up.
and no
The specially
Shiratori.
made 20 kg handcuffs and leg cuffs that would have required two specialists 2 hours to remove was placed on the side, and Shiratori was nowhere to be seen. He had finally fulfilled his promise to the guards. The alarm immediately
Turns out he
sounded,
was working
but
for the
despite
prison
work
in
of the search
disguise. He
party,
escaped like
it
a
seemed
week
he had
ago.
truly disappeared. But how on earth did this happen? How did he escape from the fortress that was Abashiri prison?
Thanks to the Prime Sketchbook.
Well, preparation had started 6 months earlier.
Thank
At
you,
the time,
Liam. Goddamn.
He didn't have the strength or stamina
Even
to
the
mount
5
any
gift subs,
sort of
man.
escape, not to mention the restraints he was in. But one thing he did have was time and patience. Every day, the guards would slide his meal through, and while he struggled to eat his food off the floor, he always made sure to save a little bit of the miso soup in the corner. You see, every night, he would hobble awkwardly to the inspection window and splash a little of it on the steel frame. He would also dab some on his handcuffs and leg cuffs. Now, his intention was for the salt content of the miso soup to oxidize the screws and bolts, eventually
What?
corroding and loosening it.
That
After a
wouldn't
month,
work.
This technique of rusting through the iron actually worked, and the first
No,
screw-
there's no
the
fucking way
next
that
few
would
months
work.
saw screws and bolts coming loose,
Unless they're
assisted
giving
by
him
use
like
of
the
first
fucking
screw as a sort of
saltiest
screwdriver.
miso of all
By the end of
time.
spring, he was
I mean, I
able
guess.
to fully remove his handcuffs and leg cuffs, as well as the steel frame of the inspection window. But there was a problem. The size of the opening was smaller than his body, which meant he couldn't fit through, a contingency thought out by the guards. What they didn't account for, though, was Shiratori's fourth ability, which involved being able to dislocate his joints at will. With this, he was now able to slide through the opening like a caterpillar. This repertoire of skills, thus surely making him an honorary member of the X-Men. With that,
This
he
is
climbed through a broken window
fanfic.
in the roof.
It's like a
and
Death
vanished.
Note chapter.
Impressively, Shiratori had now escaped from 3 prisons, as well as being the only man to ever escape Abashiri prison. Now, good on him for escaping, but this was northern Hokkaido, and the only
Thanks to
direction
Tier
he
1
could have
Narwhal
gone to
and
was the
resub
cold,
back
snowy
Thanos.
mountains. Actually, the prison guards felt that they had the last laugh, because if the cold didn't get him, the mountain bears certainly would.
But he had a fifth
Despite this
ability,
likelihood,
the
there was
ability
one
to
person
control the
who
minds of
stayed
bears.
hopeful, and that was Shiratori's wife. But she was still worried, because even if he was alive, she knew he wouldn't be able to make it back to his family, as the authorities would be constantly on his tail. Which is why she was desperately and secretly hoping that Japan would lose the war, as that would enable the
Sorry to hear
US
that,
to
Wick.
take over the country.
I stream daily,
meaning
but no schedule.
Everyone would likely forget about her husband. Of course, she kept this to herself, but then a year later, in August 1945, she got her wish.
He's the Prime Slam. His fifth ability, wife. Yes.
The Americans had now taken over the country's penitentiary system, and sweeping changes were being made. And it did seem, perhaps, that the manhunt for Yoshie Shiratori had now taken a back seat. Yet the question remained, where was he? And was he even alive? The answer
Tony.
was yes, he was alive, and living a solitary life. This time, self-imposed. It turned out he had discovered an abandoned mine on a mountainside in the Hokkaido wilderness, and was able to make a home for himself. For food, he lived off nuts and berries, wild rabbits and raccoons, and was even able to learn to catch crabs from a stream by observing the habits of bears. Life was steady and safe, but after a while, curiosity got the better of him, and so after 2 years of isolation, he made his way down the mountain to a nearby village. What he saw astounded him. The streets were filled with signs written in English, the posters and flags emblematic of the war.
And that's how he became
and
president
even more
of
strange,
Japan.
Young Japanese girls were holding hands with American soldiers. What on earth was going on? He grabbed a newspaper that had been set aside, flipped through the pages, and it was only then that he found out about the atomic bombs, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan had surrendered the previous year, and he couldn't believe it. As well as
I
wife,
said that
he
earlier,
felt it was
Sloth.
now
We've watched
pointless
Ray's
to
Last
hide,
Jump.
and
Long
so
time
bid
ago. I made a
farewell
video
to
on
his
Ray's
old
Last Jump, too.
hunter-gatherer lifestyle. He headed south of Abashiri for the next 50 days, until he reached the city of Sapporo. At this point, he was starving, so he found himself a nice ripe tomato from a nearby field, which was a huge mistake. A farmer had spotted him and mistook him for a well-known local thief, which led to a scuffle, resulting in the farmer's abdomen being pierced by a blade. Sadly, he bled out and died, but not before Shiratori was arrested for the crime. It wasn't long until police found out that they in fact had the infamous Yoshie Shiratori in their custody. For his
This shit
multiple
is super
escapes and
fake.
having
No
now murdered
fucking
the
chance.
farmer, despite his claims of self-defense, he was sentenced to death by the district court of Sapporo. And in 1947, he was sent to Sapporo prison to await execution. Now, to ensure he wouldn't escape this time while on death row,
Exit Tier
he was
1
placed
Master
under
Chef.
24-hour surveillance, with 6 armed guards personally assigned to his watch. As for the cell itself, it was upgraded further from the one in Abashiri prison, with reinforced doors, ceilings, bars, windows. In fact,
How would he get
openings
arrested
were
for a
made
farmer's
smaller
death
than
in the middle of
size
fucking
his head,
nowhere?
not just his body. Learning from the
It's
other
not like it's
escape,
GTA
as while
RP
he
where
may
it gets
be able to
instantly
dislocate his
reported.
joints, he certainly can't dislocate his skull. As long as his head can't fit, they were good. The 6 guards were so confident, in fact, that they didn't even bother cuffing him. Now, Shiratori was getting old, and the odds of escaping by this point were looking slim. As his execution loomed near, there was little he could really do, and the guards knew that. They could see the desperation on his face, looking up, searching for an escape plan that they knew would never come. Though, still, just in case, they made sure to search his room every night while he was taking a bath in the bathhouse, inspecting the ceiling, skylight, and any other openings. A month passed, and winter was now coming, weakening him further, and the realization was starting to dawn on him. He grew increasingly despondent, staying in bed, refusing to wake up.
But this was
despite
all an
the orders
act.
of the guards. This went on for a while, until one morning, the guards had enough and entered the cell to discipline him. They flipped over the duvet, and he was gone. This was not possible. How did he do it this time? Going back, to when he was first placed under 24-hour surveillance, with the 6 armed guards personally assigned to his watch. He had in fact conditioned them
His
to
fifth
look up
ability?
and keep
Shape-shifting.
up from the very start.
In fact, he never
Not just
left.
because his previous escape
He was one of the
attempts involved
floorboards.
climbing through skylight windows on ceilings, but also his suspicious yet, as it turned out, very intentional behavior of constantly looking up to figure out an escape plan. Little did they know, it was all an act, and that he already had one, but it would be taking place precisely where they weren't looking. You see, it turned out the authorities were so concerned with him escaping through a window or skylight that they neglected to reinforce the bottom. This ironically ended up being his easiest and simplest escape, because all he had to do was remove the bolted floorboards, which wasn't easy, but he had experience, and using random cutlery and a miso soup bowl, dig his way to freedom.
Yeah, but they checked his cell every night, and how did he unbolt the floor?
Due to A, the guards not suspecting this approach, and B, the floorboard panels being put back in place every night after digging. The 6 guards thought they were keeping a good eye on him even at night, but with the hole consistently positioned underneath the futon and duvet, and it increasingly becoming the norm to refuse the orders of the guards to wake up, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Placing a pile of loose floorboards underneath the duvet to trick them was also a callback to his first prison escape in Aomori. So he had now escaped from prison 4 times, and by this point, the story is starting to get ridiculous. But
also, the dirt has to go somewhere.
Capture and escape, capture and escape.
Where did he put the dirt?
About to end, because a year later, in 1948, Shiratori was exhausted. He was in his 40s now, and this
he
was
ate
a
it.
young man's game. One day, in the Kotoni neighborhood, still in Sapporo, as he stopped to rest, a policeman just happened to sit by his side for a smoke. He didn't know who Shiratori was, but he struck up a conversation with him. Shiratori, of course, was wary of his presence and tried to play it cool, all the while attempting to figure out a way to remove himself from the situation without being suspicious. Suddenly, the policeman did something unexpected, at least to him. He pulled out another cigarette and offered it to him. Shiratori was stunned. You see, cigarettes were expensive luxury items in Japan at the time, and the fact that someone offered it to him just out of the kindness of his heart brought tears to his eyes. Not to mention all his life he had been abused and mistreated by officers of the law, with even the head guard Kobayashi turning his back on him. And here was an instance of an officer treating him kindly, with respect, and with no prejudgment. As he smoked the cigarette, Shiratori couldn't help but tell the officer his full name, Yoshie Shiratori, and that he had escaped from Sapporo prison last year. In fact, he had escaped from prison 4 times in his life. It was strangely a relief to get it all off his chest, and he was even ready for the consequences. After the Kobayashi incident, he had vowed never to trust another officer of the law again. But this simple act of receiving a cigarette from a stranger broke him.
Lost Boy.
Of course, he was arrested again. But this time, things were different. Maybe it was the fact that he willingly gave himself up, or that Japan's justice system was going through a change. But the High Court of Sapporo became sympathetic to Shiratori's plight, and some of his past claims were recognized, such as acknowledging the farmer's death as a legitimate case of self-defense. They also made note that throughout all 4 of his prison escapes, he didn't kill or injure a single guard, despite the abuse he may have suffered at their hands. At the end of the deliberation, the High Court dismissed the murder charge, revoking his death sentence, and instead sentenced him to just 20 years in prison.
Aww.
They approved his request to be transferred to a Tokyo prison,
where he broke out again.
He was getting what he wanted. In Tokyo, he was sent to Fuchu prison, where, for the first time, the guards actually treated him well. It was a weird feeling. There were all these precautions and security measures in place to ensure that the infamous prison break magician wouldn't escape. But the truth was, Shiratori didn't really care anymore. Everything he'd been fighting against, the mistreatment from guards, the death penalty, even the northern climate, was no longer of concern. And he was at peace. There was no need to escape anymore. He finally accepted his punishment, and for the remainder of his sentence, acted as a model prisoner. Just 14 years later, in 1961, he was released on parole, and for the first time in a long time, he was truly a free man. He decided to head back to Aomori, where it all began, and meet up with his daughter, who, by this point, unfortunately, was the only family member he had left. For his incredible escapes, Yoshie Shiratori became a legend, an anti-hero in Japan, but it was very much the opposite for the country's penitentiary system, which had somehow allowed him to escape time and time again. This was a national embarrassment for Japan, but just as preventing criminals from breaking out of the system
Thanks to Tier
is
2,
vital for
Monk.
the safety of society,
Or
so
Monkey.
is
Thanks to
preventing
Tier
them
2,
from
Monkey.
breaking into the system. Your system, that is. And for that, I'd personally recommend Dashlane.
Oh,
Because
son of a
Dashlane
bitch.
makes
The
keeping track
Shiratori
of
use
all your
Dashlane?
passwords super duper easy.
Dashlane is good, though. So, I don't believe any of this, to be honest. How do I spell his name? Shiratori, maybe? Oh, here it is. Yoshie Shiratori. The prison escapes may have happened, but the way they happened absolutely cannot be real. I'll watch the follow-up, but the one that really sticks out to me is his fourth one.
And simplest escape, because all he had to do was remove the bolt.
He dug himself out of prison using a miso soup bowl in a place where he was being monitored 24 hours a day. This dirt has to go somewhere. So where was he putting all of this dirt? He just ate the dirt. There's no fucking chance he ate this much dirt. He would go septic. No fucking way. He would absolutely, at some point, die from it. That'd be way too much dirt. Unless, again, that was one of his superpowers, turning dirt into nutrients. But here, we'll watch the follow-up, see if they answer those questions. Because I don't believe it. In the toilet, but they'd hear him flushing the toilet constantly. If there even was a toilet to flush. Or they'd hear him or see him constantly going over to the place where the toilet is. Windows? That wouldn't work either because there'd be dirt all on the windows. And he's being monitored 24 hours a day. He'd have to take the miso soup bowl up and throw it out the window, go back down, and do this time and time again. He'd have to keep going in and out, which increases the chance that he gets caught. But we'll watch this and see if it answers it. I'm going to go say goodnight to Tiana real quick, though. Thanks for the gift sub Cavi and resub Pioneer and Actor. That's, I was talking about that the other day. She's new addition to the team. Her name's Chelsea. Is that a suggestion gaming or is that like a video thing? And yeah, quite a bit ban list. Thanks for the bits, Manic. I'll be right back.
This video is made possible
Prime,
by
Alec.
CuriosityStream. By signing up at the link in the description, you'll also get Nebula. I assume you've already watched the incredible Japanese prison break.
Just finished
and,
it.
As it turns out, many of you had some lingering questions that needed answering. Like, where did all the dirt go?
Hey, that's what I
anyone
said!
break handcuffs with their bare hands? Why didn't anyone see the
Handcuffs
rust
could have been
after
frozen.
using the miso
I
soup?
can believe
How
that
come
one.
You had 3 more years to a life sentence. What exactly was Shiratori's initial crime that led to his first arrest? What happened in his life after being released from prison? Was this whole
Thanks to
video
Tier 1
just an
Brax.
ad, bro? And
The
as a
Prime
bonus,
Spooby.
what's the next Kento Bento video going to be about? We'll get to all of that, but by far the most common question was,
Where did all the dirt go?
So let's start with that.
Thanks to the resub,
This
Mig,
is the scene in question.
Bob
The setup
Goblin,
for
Big
the fourth
Ski.
and final escape. The illustration shows.
Sorry to hit a pause, champ. Nolix, it's good to see you again, man. Holy shit, dropping you in fucking fatter gift subs, my man. Good lord. Thank you for the huge 100. Holy shit. God damn. Thanks to the bits Manic and gift sub Noodle Boy. And thank you for the bits, Jacob. My week's been alright. Fuck, Nolix, thank you. Thanks to the resub Big Mex and the Prime Nova. Have a good night, Falcon. God damn.
Shows him
Thank
burrowing
you.
straight down beneath the floorboards. But how can that be if there was no place to hide the dirt? Well, this guy thinks the only possible explanation is that he must have eaten it. Others have suggested that Shiratori must have pulled a Shawshank Redemption, and over time emptied it in the yard. But as far as I'm aware, he was in isolation at all times. So that's probably not what happened.
The Prime creator.
No, the answer is actually pretty simple. Just as with most building structures, the foundation of the cell isn't built directly on the surface of the soil, which means there was more than enough room underneath the floorboards for the dirt to fit. And sorry that this wasn't clearly illustrated in the drawing, but let's all blame Charlie the illustrator for that. Another common remark is that this video must be fake.
I see. That makes a lot more sense.
Well, this
I didn't even think of that.
And of course, what makes this story worth telling in the first place is precisely because it doesn't seem real. But specifically about the handcuffs, remember, these were cuffs from the 1930s in Japan. Breaking them isn't too absurd an idea when you consider, and I'll quote this Reddit user, that Japanese iron at the time wasn't especially pure, mostly deriving from iron sand, which has a ton of impurities. It's likely Shiratori could snap the cuffs along the weak link. And on top of that, we know Shiratori had immense strength, making this all the more plausible. But what about his escape from the...
Somebody's like hitting their car with a sledgehammer right now.
The 20 kg solid iron handcuffs and leg cuffs after using the salty miso soup. Why didn't anyone notice the rust? Those metalwork guys apparently came every couple weeks or so to remove his cuffs so he could take a bath. By the way, sorry about the maggot shot. So why didn't they see anything? Well, the rusting was intentionally made obvious in the illustrations to demonstrate clearly what was going on. That was my call. But in reality, it wasn't so visible. And the way the specialist removed the cuffs every few weeks was by breaking apart the actual metal. So they never actually paid too much attention to the screws and bolts. Okay, so this one was kind of surprising to me. Quite a few people asked, how could there be 3 more years added to a life sentence, as was the case for Shiratori after his second escape? No, this wasn't a mistake in the script, nor does it mean that the prison keeps the corpse 3 years after death. Rather, the answer is that a life sentence is not what you think it is. A life sentence or life imprisonment can mean, yes, inmates remain in prison for the rest of their natural lives. But it could also mean for a fixed period of time, or until they are paroled. In 1930s Japan, I believe this period was at least 10 years. Nowadays, it's increased to about 35 years. And this may also help you understand how some criminals can be given multiple life sentences, like 2 or 3 or even 10.
How about we just change the nomenclature and stop calling them life sentences?
An accomplice in the Oklahoma City bombing, 161 consecutive life sentences. Okay, then what exactly was Shiratori's initial crime? The one that got him imprisoned in the first place? This was asked a lot in the comments too, even though I actually addressed it at the very beginning of the video. Prisoner Yoshie Shiratori had had enough. He was forced to confess to a murder he did not commit. But just to elaborate on this, Shiratori had a rough upbringing after his father died and his mother abandoned him at the age of 2. And he later found himself involved with a bad crowd, or seemingly some sort of gang, which may explain how he developed such skills as lockpicking, handcuff breaking, and prison parkour. Now, it was apparently these people who were the ones responsible for committing the murder, not Shiratori, but he made the mistake of tagging along. After they were all arrested, what happened was that the group turned on him and claimed he was in fact the murderer, and along with the police beating a false confession out of him, became the fall guy, and he was quickly convicted. Now that's apparently the story, but the circumstances surrounding this was too ambiguous for the courts, which is why he was still sentenced to 20 years at the end. As he was cleared of the farmer's murder, a legitimate case of self-defense, but not the initial murder. So all that was what led to the events at the start of the video. As for what happened to him 28 years later after being released from Fuchu prison, by the way, this was the same prison that was referenced in the 300 million yen robbery that I covered in the Japanese bank heist video, a famous heist that took place 7 years after Shiratori was released from prison. I already touched on this a little with him meeting his daughter, which was a nice note to end the video on, but according to some sources, it appears, unfortunately, that his relationship with her was somewhat strained. Which isn't all that surprising considering the stigma in Japan of having a relative in prison, and her never actually meeting him before. So after his release, yes, he was happy to see her, but he later ended up bouncing around Japan doing odd jobs in various cities, mainly construction work. And actually, why don't I play you the alternative ending that wasn't shown on YouTube, but only on the Nebula streaming platform? Just 14 years later, in 1961,
oh, director's cut, the Snyder cut.
And for the first time in a long time, he was truly a free man. He decided to head back to Aomori, where it all began, and meet up with his daughter, who, by this point, unfortunately, was the only family member he had left. For his incredible escapes, Yoshie Shiratori became a legend, an anti-hero in Japanese popular culture, read about in books and depicted in movies. And even though Shiratori passed away in 1979 at the age of 71, his legacy lives on, perhaps the most, in the one place he wanted to leave more than any other, Abashiri Prison. Or at least what has now become the Abashiri Prison Museum.
Oh, we saw
where
this.
Shiratori has been immortalized.
This was on the
as a
Wikipedia
mannequin
page.
Display simulating his renowned miso soup escape.
That's pretty cool.
So I was able to end the video this way, letting the story breathe,
Thanks
because
Prime,
new
Fin,
Kento
Fin,
Bento
and
videos
resub
all
super.
go up on Nebula completely ad-free. Thousands of high-budget Sonic did Game of Thrones, Patrick H. Willems, and experiment on our own terms. We've only just started, but it's a mystery, the
Holy
great
shit,
train
this is like
robbery, the real war of
Wait, this is
crime,
actually like a
Japan's
7-minute
samurai
ad.
car, which makes this one all the more fast of myself and revealing the title, as plans can always change, but I will say it's somewhat Halloween-inspired.
God damn. Yeah, that was good. I do not think we watched that ever. None of that ringed any bells. What might have happened is we started it and then it's pretty vague. Sundance rejects. I do love me some internet
The
historian.
following is a true story. Stockholm, December 22nd, 2000. Gentlemen, the Swedish National Museum. 90,000 square feet of priceless artwork. Only 2 roads in and out. The police will be ready. Walking away with the goods won't be easy.
Smash and grab job, huh?
Not quite. First things first. a
I do
distraction.
love
At exactly
heists.
4:55 p.m., 5 minutes before the museum closes, we blow up 2 cars outside the Grand Hotel and the Strand.
There's some actual Ocean's 11
Naturally,
shit.
fire trucks and police will be dispatched.
What about the guards in the building?
Only one. And he'll be busy ushering everyone to leave. Now, we get ourselves armed and approach.
Thanks to resub.
Meanwhile,
Flare?
2 of us are already inside waiting for the signal. Once you hear those explosions, put on your balaclavas and take out guns.
Get on the floor! Don't move! So the standard disarm the guards and get everyone on the floor.
That's right. Then one of you stay in the lobby while the other 2 make your way
That's
upstairs
actually
into the
Wang?
gallery.
Yeah, I know it was.
Now remember, gentlemen, no browsing. We're here for 3 paintings in particular. Conversation with the
Who's
garden
gonna buy
and
these, though?
Young
It's a
Parisi
stupid thing
by
to
Renoir
steal.
And a self-portrait by Rembrandt.
Art is just money
How do we
laundering.
crack the safe?
Who are you gonna
There
sell it
is no
to?
safe. No security cameras or alarms either. Wire cutters are all we need.
Amateurs.
We bag the goods and bust out the front door.
And we're just supposed to walk out of there with the 3 paintings and not get stopped?
Yep,
Won't take the police long to catch up.
that's what I'm counting on. A little surprise, I
Oh, he's got those ninja things. The little
From there,
spike
it's an easy walk
traps.
to the docks where we've got a boat ready. We skim around the waterfront and down the
Caltrops,
labyrinthine
thank
canals
you.
of Stockholm and make a beeline for Malar Lake. Then we dock in a quiet area and make it on foot back to the road.
Let me guess, you already have a car waiting.
Of course. We drive back to the city, get back to HQ, paintings in hand. And congratulations, boys. We've just robbed the Swedish National Museum for an estimated $30 million.
If that sells to anybody, which I
That's
really don't think it
exactly
ever would.
how all of it played out. The next day, the police had cleaned up the torched cars, and they were questioning staff, getting any clues they could about the suspects. They didn't have any faces, They didn't have any
Shady
DNA
rich
evidence.
people will buy.
It was a
I just
professional
highly
job,
doubt it.
and there was very little to
Shady
go on.
rich people don't really buy art for the sake of buying art. It's a money laundering.
Until someone came forward. A witness. An old man. I was working on the river when I saw 3 lads speed off
Thanks to resub.
out of the area in an
Angelax.
orange boat. Did you get a good look at him? No, but they seemed suspicious, so I followed him right through the canals, into the Malar, and right to the shore, where they parked their vessel and abandoned it. It's very Swedish. Can you show us where on the map? So the police sent out a couple of cars and found the boat. Here it is.
Thanks to
Nothing
resub.
inside.
Kurai.
No paintings, detective. Damn. What about the registration? Nothing, sir. Well,
Thanks, Timbo.
I guess the only thing we can do is put out a picture of the boat and ask the public for help. So they published pictures of the boat in the local newspaper and asked people to come forward with information. The next day. Oh, that's my boat. The boat owner paid the police a visit. I'm
How
Carl
convenient.
Lundmark, and that's my boat. What happened? We'll ask the questions.
Thanks to resub. Do
I
what I
just sold
want.
the thing last week to 3 chaps who looked a bit suspect. Did you get their names? Afraid not, sorry. Although, when I sold the boat to them, they asked if they could use my trailer to transport it. And? Well, I said yes, but only if they gave me their phone number for safety. Well, have you still got it? Yep, here it is. I wrote it on the back of the receipt. And
It seems
this is
pretty
where
easy. They've
everything
got 'em.
unraveled for the thieves. Because despite all of this Ocean's 11 style bullshit, they had used their real phone number.
Amateurs.
So police looked up the number and everyone they had called. We've got a match. The number was connected to a gang of petty thieves. They were not big-time criminals. They had done small stuff like car thefts, drug peddling, and so on.
That's
They
still
were
pretty
not
impressive.
criminal masterminds. This thread of evidence led to 2 men serving sentences in a minimum security prison 10 miles from Stockholm. A Russian named Alexander Petrov and a Swedish national named Stefan Nordstrom. But wait, these men were behind bars. They have an airtight alibi, right? Well, turns out they are considered low-risk prisoners, which means they are allowed weekend furloughs.
What?
Essentially, they're just doing jail as a day job.
What the
While
fuck?
good boy Petrov had returned from his weekend away, Nordstrom had not. So police went
What?
to work searching Nordstrom's empty cell.
No fucking way. Are you serious? Like, so in Sweden, when you're a low-risk prisoner, they just let you go home on the weekends? So it's literally just like being in school again. What was it called? A prison furlough? Yeah, it's a real thing. That is crazy. Well, you know, it is what it is, I guess. Thanks to the resub, Hammy.
Lo and behold, Nordstrom had been doing a bit of light reading. Collections of newspaper clippings from past art heists. Very subtle. On top of that, Nordstrom had reportedly been visiting a bunch of auction houses in the area. They were clearly the painting bandits. Now, here's the thing about art thievery. It's a difficult game. Unlike jewelry or other valuable goods, you can't just offload these anywhere. You need a buyer who has a lot of cash and is willing to take a huge risk themselves. Possession of stolen property is a crime, and they wouldn't be allowed to keep the paintings if word ever got out. So essentially, they had $30 million in unsellable goods.
That's exactly what I was fucking saying, and chat was just going off of what they see in video games. It is not easy to sell
So,
fucking stolen
What do we
art.
do? Oh, we could sell it to a billionaire in China.
Okay, do you know any?
Thanks to the resub, Hypnotoad and McLovin.
Yeah, I thought so. So shut the fuck up and think of something better.
Why don't we just ransom it back to the museum?
That's not the worst idea in the world.
December 28th, 2000. 6 days after the robbery. Petrov's lawyer approaches the police station. Hello. Yes, hello. I am here on behalf of my client, and acting as an intermediary. We have your paintings. Go on. I am here to negotiate it safely to your return. For a modest sum. Interesting tact. This is, of course, completely illegal. Lawyers can't just negotiate ransoms for their clients.
Until
Got any
now.
proof you have the paintings? Right here. The attorney then reveals
Is this the worst lawyer of all
hostage-style
time?
photos of the stolen art, complete with that day's newspaper. Right. So who are these clients of yours? Can't say. Lawyer-client confidentiality and all that. Right. Well, let me just have a chat with my supervisor. The police feigned interest, but there was no way they were going to pay a ransom when they could simply catch them.
Obviously.
So instead,
Fucking
they stalled
obviously.
and placed a surveillance team on Petrov for the next time he met with his attorney. A couple of days later, that meeting took place. And surprise, surprise, they're not alone. Nordstrom had turned up as well.
Oh.
Wait for it.
See you soon. Take care.
Now, go, go, go. The police moved in on Nordstrom.
What the? No, I'm innocent.
Save it for the judge. What do we have here?
Those aren't mine.
In a moment of sheer genius, Nordstrom had decided to bring with him a bag filled with Polaroids of the stolen paintings. Is this how you get your kicks? I'm gonna be sick. Get these to the lab. Later, the lab found Petrov's fingerprints all over the Polaroids. With this evidence, they obtained a warrant to raid a cellar that the gang frequented. Look everywhere. They may have left the subtlest of clues. Anything that can even give us a scrap of... Detective? Here's a date book literally showing all of the details of the heist, including all of the co-conspirators. Nice work, Detective. Thanks, Detective. Hey, do you know what time it is?
These guys are good.
Is it? It's time for a montage.
Thanks to the prime key.
In all, police arrested and charged 13 for the heist. Nordstrom received 6.5 years.
Oh.
Petrov received 8.
Spieß.
3 others were given between 2 and 4 years for accessory, and 3 more men received sentences for up to 4 years for receiving stolen goods, and 5 more were accused and subsequently acquitted. One of them included Petrov's criminal lawyer, who was charged for accessory to attempted extortion for his involvement in putting forward the ransom.
Thanks to prime Winnie.
Well, we got the bad guys. But there was a problem. They hadn't recovered any of the paintings. They had searched the cellar,
Thanks to some
top to
dead
bottom,
pixels.
the homes of the criminals. They had questioned all of them, and no one was giving up the goods.
What's in a trash can? Yeah. If there's any justice, they just threw them away.
What is it, honey? Is it the paintings again?
Thanks to the resub Soggy. And mustard.
I just can't stop thinking about it. They're out there somewhere.
Just come back to bed.
No. I think I'll go for a walk.
Thanks to the resub Rack.
Couldn't sleep either. No time. Rumors are circulating that Renoir's The Conversation is going up for sale. Count me in, detective. I just have to get suited
Thanks
up.
to prime Rakan.
You're gonna need something a little less official. We're going undercover. Ad time. Okay, quick hypothetical. Let's say you were single And I also
So
happened
how
to
are
be
there
single,
12
and we
people
were browsing the web
associated with
together,
that?
right? And then you said,
Thanks for
"Oh,
resub.
let's go
Dave
on this
Room.
website. Would you let me use NordVPN?" Okay, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm not being serious. Although, okay, you're drowning, right? And
Helped move the
I
paintings?
rescue you, and you don't.
Yeah,
have
I
a
suppose
boyfriend.
so. Just all
And
charges
I'm like,
accessories.
"Oh no, I have to give you mouth to mouth, or you'll die." Right? You'll die, and I don't know how, and I want to Google it, but I'm worried about my data falling into the wrong hands. Could I use NordVPN then for 70% off? No, wait. Okay, we're in the Amazon forest, and we're like walking together, but not too close, obviously. And a snake bites you. Oh my god. And I have to suck out the poison. But then I remember watching this documentary, right? And it was on like snake bites and stuff. And I'm gonna watch it again, and I'm gonna say
Thanks to
goodbye.
resub Frozen and
Oh
Night.
my god, it's region locked. Would you mind if I slipped in a little NordVPN? Not even for 70% off? No, I'm just messing with you. I'm just messing. Could you imagine though if I use NordVPN right now? Like for real? No, I'm not gonna use it right now. I'm not. It's dumb. But like, no one's around. If I was to
Thanks to
use
Prime.
NordVPN,
Lol
no one would
sex?
know. No, wait, where are you going? I mean, look, wait. NordVPN lets you use 6 devices on one account. You can use one of mine. Your boyfriend won't know. Like, watch this. I just type in nordvpn.com/incognito and I get 7.
He puts more efforts into the ads than most into a whole
I
video.
can treat you better and keep your data safe with NordVPN.
Thanks to resub Isa.
Oh my god. Wouldn't have happened if you got NordVPN. Ad over.
Here's your tier 1 Dirty Dan.
Swedish police set up an undercover agent to infiltrate the ring and to buy the Renoir. The detective would be posing as a representative for an interested buyer who was standing by. But they'd need confirmation that the painting was the real deal. That's him. Art thief?
Yes. Are you the buyer?
That's me. I represent a very wealthy and very interested client. But of course, before we can start negotiating, I need to know that we're talking about the real deal.
All right, mate. Come with me.
The undercover agent followed one of the men into the bathroom.
Okay. What do you think?
That's quite something.
Come on.
My client will be very pleased.
Okay. What do you say to 200k?
That sounds acceptable. In fact, it's quite low. My rich buyer probably would have paid a lot more even.
Whoa. Fantastic. Yes. Hey, get in.
They both washed their hands and exited the cafe. Seconds later, police came screeching around the corner, sirens blazing. Sorry, fellas, it was me the whole time.
Who?
Oh, right, we've never met before. Well, book 'em, boys.
Thanks to 3 gifts of Bull. Appreciate
You
it, man.
fucking mug.
I'm still lost on how the fucking art ended up in his hands.
They had done it. Partially. They had retrieved one of
Because
the
they weren't
3
able to
paintings,
sell it,
and they had a
right?
bunch of new leads. The cops rounded up even more members of the gang, among them Alexander Sasha Lindgren and an Iraqi, Baha Kadham, as well as 3 of his
Thanks to
brothers.
Prime Jones.
Now, remember these lads. We'll be coming back to them. But even though they rounded up all these guys, only one man would have charge.
So they just gave it
against
to
him
people to
that would
hold.
stick.
Okay.
The rest walked. And there were still 2 pieces of art out there.
Thanks to Prime Victus.
Los Angeles, 4.5 years later. Downtown LA.
Thanks to resub
The
Disraeli.
FBI are working on a routine case. It's a drug bust with some Bulgarians. Nothing too out of the ordinary. Until they heard something unusual.
Yeah, so we've got Renoir's Young Parisian for sale.
Is that code for something? Are they human trafficking? Chief, I believe it's that painting that was stolen from the Swedish National Museum a few years back.
How would anyone remember that?
Yeah, we want to get it out of the
By
city.
name.
Sounds like it's going to be on the move soon. No one's going to take our credit.
Happy
We're the
4th
FBI,
tricycle.
Damn it. Infallible. Pillars of competence. So they ramped up surveillance. The Bureau intercepted a call from one
Name's
of
the
the
Prime
gang's
White Club.
higher-ups. Boris Kostov. It's time for a good old-fashioned stakeout. The FBI waited outside Kostov's home until they saw him load up a small, painting-sized package into his car's trunk.
Yeah, we got it. I told him to be careful. Should be 8 pairs of rips.
We're going in. Get down, get the fuck down. The FBI swarmed. Kostov surrendered. We've got it, Captain. Haha, the big prize. FBI wins again. So they opened the bag and found... dry cleaning.
Oh, shit.
Yes, really. Shit. Arrest him anyway, boys.
Outsmarted.
So they pull Kostov in.
I used to give some hooters.
Okay, I'll be good cop, and you also be the good cop, because people like it when you're nice. Good thinking, Captain. Look, here's the thing. You surprised us with the laundry. Those whites. Very white, by the way. I'd like to know who you use. But the thing is, we've been tailing you for months, and we know about the drugs. And that's the bigger deal anyway.
Oh yeah, you got any evidence?
Yeah, all of this. The overwhelming amount of evidence means Kostov is definitely going to be found guilty.
Thanks
And
for
that
some
means
Chalmers.
possibly 30 years
Woo!
in prison. At his age, this is effectively a life sentence. In a corner, Kostov broke.
Yeah, alright. Alright, I know where your paintings are. I want a deal.
Kostov agreed to assist the police. Good choice. Now take us to the paintings. Kostov led the police to a local pawn shop.
Down here.
As they entered the basement, Kostov pointed to an art folio leaning against the wall, wrapped in towels and a grocery bag. They unraveled it, and surely enough, it was the young Parisian. And in good condition, too. Bingo. 2 out of 3. The only one remaining was the Rembrandt. However, with Kostov as an asset, authorities now had a way to find it. Give me the other painting, Kostov.
I don't... But I... Yeah, okay, I got contacts in Sweden.
Wait, no, that one was correct. Say that again.
I know people in Sweden who know where it is.
So it's not here in LA?
No, it's back in Stockholm.
How the fuck did it end up in LA?
Bastards.
How big was their gang?
How do we know you're telling the truth? Sorry, it's a reflex.
That's okay. Because...
Yes?
Because...
Yeah?
Because the person who has it
Yes?
is my own son.
Whoa.
Alexander Sasha Lindgren.
Oh my god.
I know, right?
Kostov was willing to incriminate his own son to avoid jail time.
Yeah, I would too if I was in that
Back
situation.
to Sweden.
Fuck, just take my kid. And the art. The art sucks anyway,
In
fuck.
Stockholm, the son, Lindgren, was being pressured by his associates Baha and Dea Kadham. Those are the guys from before, by the way. To sell off the Rembrandt. It's been almost 5 years, dude. Are you gonna sell this thing or not?
Well, I do enjoy looking at it, but I suppose you're right.
The FBI makes a call. Sweden, my man, I got a tip for you. I can't understand you. Speak English. We'll put someone on the line who does. Okay, thanks. Hello? English? Hello? Okay, cool. We have a tip for you. The FBI tells Swedish authorities to put surveillance on Lindgren and the Kadhums. Lindgren, unaware that his father had betrayed him, would be caught up in the sting. The stage was set. But if they were going to pull
Who's the
this
resub
off,
Rice?
they would need to call in their top dog. Part scholar, part daredevil. Alright, I have no idea why he's written this way in all the articles, but we're going to go with it.
This guy,
King of
he
the
means
state,
business.
The defender of Dali, the guardian of Goya, half scholar, half daredevil, and 100% man. With an alignment of chaotic good, he'll teach you about the classics, then he'll teach you to make love. Robert K. Whitman.
The Robert Whitman? Exit Prime Grin.
Part 5. Copenhagen. September 15th, 2005. The meeting
Sleep well,
had been arranged.
Lebez.
The Kadham brothers are on a train from Stockholm, secretly followed by police the whole way. And as they sit in their seats, in the hand of one of the brothers is held a small, painting-sized parcel. Police could have arrested them then and
Dry
there.
cleaning again.
They would have had the brothers red-handed. But that wouldn't be enough. It would be a simple possession of stolen goods charge, and the police wanted to catch them in the act of selling the painting. So they stood by. Kostov and Whitman arrived at the Scandic Hotel. The Cadams and Lindgren
True,
made
Mike.
their way too.
Oh, hello. Hey guys.
They said in Swedish.
Do you guys want to do the deal now or grab lunch first?
No, let's just get this over with.
Okay, come with me.
Come on, son. Let's throw the old football around. But Dad, come on, son. Look, Dad, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm proud of you.
So they let the dad go to this?
Whitman led Cadam.
Man, that dad did not want to go to jail at all.
Thoroughly
Good,
bugged in preparation.
good lord.
I hope you like Swedish Corona.
Nice. I'm gonna have to count it though.
No problem.
Whitman knew he had it. He could see the look in Cadham's eyes as he greedily counted the money.
Nice to do some canned milk.
So, you guys had like a good trip out?
Mm-hmm.
See any good movies lately? You know, there's a delightful restaurant down.
It's very hard to count when you keep talking.
I want to look up Robert K. Whitman now.
All right, and that's 200,000.
Amazing.
What
5
kind of
years
stunts is
holding
he
on to
known
this painting,
for?
Seeing all of his buddies go to jail. For
Oh,
200
wow. Well, sorry to interrupt, but you need to see who Robert K. Whitman stands for. Robert King Whitman. And he was a special agent. I don't know why he's written as a part-time daredevil, but he looks like he's fucking all business. What a fucking man. And then here he is with a giant sniper rifle, I guess. Probably after just hunting a rare elephant to extinction. Alright, definitely not what I pictured with the part-time secret agent, part-time daredevil. Let me see what kind of stunts he did. Robert Whitmaniac. Oh, Robert Whitman Inc. Misread that. Con man's smile and a daredevil's nerves.
would all be worth it.
Thanks to the
And
resub.
it would be
Wimble in the prime
Well, we got
MC.
Baha then stood up and left the room with the cash.
Hey, wait!
Baha went back down the lobby and was making his way to the exit. Wait, what's happening? Baha walked right out the front door of the hotel without saying much of anything. What the hell's going on? Has the deal soured?
Get him!
Has our cover been blown? Is this a cross? Police on standby were starting to get nervous, but Whitman was staying cool. Seconds passed.
Just hold steady.
Minutes passed.
Thanks to resub Bully
Stay
Beef.
cool.
They're getting away.
Stay cool.
Hope
And
everything's
then
alright, Beef.
they came back with a different bag in hand.
Oh!
It turns out the bag they had before
Dry
was a
cleaning.
decoy. They
Oh.
were using it to see if any cops would be drawn out. Now that the deal seemed solid, they brought the real thing. Got him. Cadam returns to the room, and Whitman examines
Wow.
the painting.
Pretty smart
That's
plan.
the real deal.
Danish SWAT is standing by and ready to swoop. Whitman spoke the code words necessary to launch their raid on the room.
Would you like an orange?
Excuse me?
My favorite color is orange.
Thanks to resub Tostitos and Bilbo.
Okay.
I mean, orange, you glad? I said orange?
Anyway, thanks for the money, but, we gotta go.
No, wait. Let me arrange you a cab.
That's okay, we'll walk.
The SWAT team burst into the room as Whitman jumped into the bathtub, clutching the painting to his chest.
He jumps out the window and parachutes away, just taking the painting for
The
himself.
arrests of Baha Kadham, his brother Diea, and the betrayed Lindgren went off without a hitch. Whitman emerged
the
from the
resub Dira.
bathroom victorious. Women swooned, men swooned, I'm swooning. Jesus, what a man.
Looks like you're caught by the police.
Yes, well done, Whitman. And we would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for your sly doggery.
Thank you. Now, take him away, boys.
Whitman held the painting aloft, It was
busted
now
over
safe.
his knee.
He returned it to
I'm
the
Robert
Swedish
Whitman,
National
baby.
Museum, and the timing was perfect. Because in just a few days, they would be exhibiting a show on Rembrandt anyway, and they not only had him back, but a story to go along with it. The painting was
Thanks,
unveiled
Resub.
as
Jericho,
the
Perky, and Tier 1
this
Mama
time
Papa.
behind glass, and with a specially assigned security guard standing by its side. So the Cadham brothers and Alexander Lindgren were convicted of receiving stolen goods. However, their sentences were overturned by a Swedish appeals court ruling that they had been provoked into the crime.
What?
But
What?
as for our hero,
What?
well, Whitman hung up his
What do
case,
you have to do to go,
and
like,
nothing
go to jail
has
in
ever been
Sweden?
Stolen again. The end.
Oh my god! Jail in Sweden sounds like almost pleasant. Like, if you're financially down on your luck, just commit a crime in Sweden, you get meals, and you get to go home on the weekends. And you apparently have to work really hard even to get that, to go to jail. It is quite literally like a hotel. That's nuts. What was it again? Prison furlough, what they call it? Where they just let prisoners go home every weekend? Thanks to the resub, Yoshi. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's good though. Like, maybe those guys never go on to commit another crime ever. And it's just a net positive. Now you just got 3 dudes that have a cool story to tell, and now they're total upstanding citizens. I couldn't tell you. All I can tell you is if that was in the US, you would have fucking chaos. It would literally be the purge. If you just let prisoners go home every weekend, they would just start going wild. I don't think it would work here. But maybe they do. Furlough is in the US too? Yeah, but I imagine that's for petty crimes, right? Not $30 million art thieves. Let me see. US furlough. I've never heard of this before, so let's see. In the US, it seems to only be for special needs or medical emergencies, but I haven't read super far into it yet. It's also not common at all here. Not that wild of a story. Well, I disagree. What do you consider a wild story, then? It does exist here, but it is highly...
This will be part 1 of a 2-part series.
Thanks,
And is
Resub
made
Noisy.
possible by Nebula and CuriosityStream. Tokyo, March 1970. 31,000 feet up in the air. Japan Airlines Flight 351 was reaching its cruising altitude. It had left Tokyo's Haneda Airport no more than 10 minutes ago and was set to land in Fukuoka in an hour's time. This was to be a relatively short flight, a domestic affair. But little did the passengers and crew
Thanks to
know
Bits
it was
Wordmeister.
going to be neither, as Japan Airlines Flight 351 was about to undergo a harrowing ordeal. On the plane were 122 passengers, tourists, businessmen, first-year uni students, doctors on their way to medical conferences, really people from all walks of life, and including a few notable individuals like the high-ranking Pepsi executive, the talented bass player from the up-and-coming rock band Hadaka no Darizu, and the Roman Catholic priest from New York. Yes, this was a diverse mix, with people of varied experiences and professions, but nothing could have prepared them for what was to come.
DB Cooper.
At about 7:30 a.m., as the plane
DB
was
Cooper
flying over
fucking
the
hops
southern
in here
face
and
of
takes
Mount
this shit
Fuji,
over.
A young Japanese man got up from the seat to make a special announcement.
Thanks to the Resub Arouse Pasta.
He was hijacking the plane.
Oh.
This man was Takamaro Tamiya, a 27-year-old recent graduate. Now, this announcement wasn't met with as much terror and panic as one would expect, as this was the year 1970, when airline hijackings weren't illegal. It wasn't yet considered an international crime. Yes, people were concerned, some more than others.
Well, it's not a crime.
Towards
You can't do anything about it.
piracy
Good work.
was not how it is
Loophole.
today. But this was about to change, as Takamaro Tamiya proceeded to pull out a samurai sword.
Ooh.
Yes, a samurai sword.
That is anime shit.
The seriousness of the situation
Jesus
was now
Christ!
apparent to
It's
all.
Batosai, the
Despite
plane
this,
stealer.
122 passengers was a lot for a single hijacker, which is why he didn't come alone. With everyone now in a state of panic, Tamiya's accomplices began to make
Thanks,
themselves
Resub, Miss
known
Hockey.
one by
Thank
one.
you, Keyheart.
The university students had revealed themselves. Now, this was unexpected and bizarre. Many of the students were still in their early years at Tokyo and Kyoto universities, two of the most prestigious universities in all of Japan, with the youngest among them being just 16 years old, actually still in high school. Just like their leader Tamiya.
Well, half of anime takes place in high school.
Some had
Not
pistols
surprising.
and homemade pipe bombs as well. This was confusing and terrifying. As they tried to break into the cockpit, the distressed pilots radioed in for help, relaying the dire situation on board. It seemed it wasn't long until the hijackers would make their way in. The rest of the students were now tying the male passengers down to their seats as ordered by their leader. Now, it was certainly an odd sight to see such young Japanese recruits involved in this act of terror, 9 in total. But the most surprising of all, perhaps, was the identity of one particular hijacker. He was the bass player of the up-and-coming rock band Hadaka no Rarizu.
Oh shit!
It wasn't a joke. His name was Moriaki Wakabayashi, and he was in it just as much as his fellow comrades. It was time to end things. With the cockpit finally breached and the pilots restrained, the samurai skyjackers were now in full control of Japan Airlines Flight 351.
And they played a fucking crazy concert.
So lax as to allow samurai swords, pistols, and pipe bombs to be this easily smuggled onto a plane. But 1970 was a different time, and well, the demands of the hijackers reflected that. You see, the reason they took control of the plane was to fly it across the Pacific Ocean to the Caribbean, specifically to Havana, Cuba. This was to be their final destination. With Cuba being a communist haven led by revolutionary Fidel Castro, the 9 men wanted to make a grand political statement to the world, hijacking a passenger airliner right out of Tokyo and diverting it to Cuba, the country of their dreams. As members of the Japanese
Very surprising.
communist militant group hell-bent on overthrowing the Japanese government and the monarchy, they wanted to establish contact with revolutionary forces in Cuba so that they could receive specialized military training for the impending revolutionary war they would wage upon returning to Japan. They claimed they loved their country, and this was the only way. But on top of that, they were hoping the act would inspire and promote rebellion across the rest of Asia. And this was just the beginning. Really, they wanted to start a world revolution, and they were willing to advocate it through terror and violence. After all, they had already long threatened to wage civil war in Tokyo and Osaka, and had previously been involved in violent street battles and a few small-scale bombings. Hijackings were their next venture, and these 9 men, young men, were the frontrunners. They had been targeted and scouted from leftist student groups from universities across Tokyo and Kyoto, and were now ready and willing to give everything to the cause.
This is a wild story.
This included Moriaki Wakabayashi, the bass player of the rock group Hadaka no Rarizu, which started off as a university band before their rise in popularity. Now, perhaps it was this very youthful inexperience and overconfidence that led to their first lapse in judgment, which awkwardly enough had to be explained to them by the pilot. You see, it was just not possible for the plane to make it all the way to Cuba, not even close. Why? Well, Japan Airlines Flight 351 was a Boeing 727 airliner, which was designed for short to medium range flights only, not for one making its way halfway across the world in a single trip. The plane was simply not
We'll fuel it with music,
Pacific, much less to Cuba. And this was shocking to the hijackers, as they simply hadn't expected this turn of events. They needed a plan B fast, one that involved an alternate destination. But, well, even that appeared to be out of the question, as the pilots quickly informed them of an even more pressing concern. The plane was running out of fuel. They only had enough for the original destination, Fukuoka. Tamiya had to think on his feet. Time was ticking. Right, well, if they had to land in Fukuoka, then they'd land in Fukuoka, but on their terms.
Yeah, this is our landing.
The Japanese Ministry of Transport.
We did this one.
Hijacking, and was entrusted with the task of ensuring the
Thanks
safety of all the
Windsor.
passengers. A member of the department, Vice Minister Shinjiro Yamamura, would directly oversee the hostage recovery efforts. Of course, word also got around to the news outlets, who quickly reported on the incident live. This was a first for Japan, as never before had they experienced the hijacking of an airplane. This shocked and horrified the entire nation. At 9 a.m., Japan Airlines Flight 351 touched down at Fukuoka Airport, where they were met by a horde of spectators and members of the media.
Wow, like celebrities.
In surrounding the plane, as they readied themselves for the eventual standoff. With 129 hostages on board, 100
they have an actual sword fight.
Crew members, the hijackers felt that they had the upper hand. But it all would rest on the negotiations. As Yamamura and the authorities prepared themselves, the negotiations began. For the next few hours, the two sides went back and forth, both unwilling to budge, with Tamiya threatening to kill every last one of the hostages if his demands weren't met. This was an intense negotiation, with a lot at stake, but Eventually, an agreement was reached. So the deal was for the hijackers to release 23 of the passengers in exchange for more fuel. But it had to be enough fuel to get them to their new destination. Now, Havana, Cuba, was no longer an option. It was too far. So they had to settle for one within reach. After much discussion and consideration, they decided on Pyongyang. The hijackers were going to North Korea.
Whoa!
Now, this made sense to the 9 men, as
Whoa!
North Korea was another communist regime, ruled by another great revolutionary, Kim Il-sung, grandfather to
This
Kim
is
Jong-un.
nuts.
They reasoned that flying the plane to Pyongyang would still make a grand political statement to the world.
Thanks, recent
Furthermore,
practical.
they had actually already planned for a brief stopover in Pyongyang, as the city had been a
All good,
serious
man,
candidate to host their base of operations for their international revolution, and they wanted to conduct some reconnaissance while en route to Cuba. So all this just meant a slightly longer detour to North Korea. No big deal, really. Once the dust had settled, they'd figure out another way to Cuba. Viva la revolution! And so the deal was done. Tamiya got what he wanted, and even better, they still had 106 hostages on board for leverage. On the Japanese side, all the passengers released were women, children.
Kim
and the
Il-sung
young.
gets on the
Most
plane
of all,
next.
which was fortunate.
Picks up a samurai
not
sword.
quite what they had hoped for. The majority on the plane were still very much in jeopardy. But now, it was time to go. With the pilots having never flown to North Korea and unable to rely on Pyongyang air control for guidance, Fukuoka airport officials had to quickly pass them a map of the Korean peninsula
Thanks
to
to the
navigate
resub
for themselves.
losing internet.
That would have to do for now. But with that, Japan Airlines Flight 351 fueled up and took off, bound for the Hermit Kingdom. Now, aside from the Japanese, there was actually one other group that was rather unhappy with the outcome thus far, and that was the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA. You see, Langley had sent over agents for their own hostage recovery mission, as there were a couple of US nationals on board, the Pepsi executive Herbert Brill, and
What?
the Roman Catholic priest from New York, Daniel MacDonald. They had business to attend to.
What?
But now, with the plane heading towards North Korea, a nation known for their international
Pepsi
hostility
guy?
and political reclusiveness, not to
Maybe
mention their
Coke
general
planned
hatred and
this.
contempt towards Americans, things weren't looking great. By now, Flight 351 was well on its way to Pyongyang. It had crossed the Tsushima Strait, flown over the Korean mountain ranges, and had just about reached the DMZ, the Korean Demilitarized Zone. This 38th parallel is the contested border dividing the Korean peninsula into North and South Korea. Once past this point, there would be no turning back. But on top of that, the pilots were having a hard time with navigation, as they were unfamiliar with the flight route. Seeing as the countries had no diplomatic ties, Japanese airlines and airport
Thanks to Tier
controllers
1, no
were
skill.
simply unable to make contact with their North Korean counterparts. The Japanese pilots didn't even know where the airport in Pyongyang was located. Sure, they were given a map by airport officials shortly before leaving Fukuoka, but they were astounded to discover it was just a basic line map taken from a junior high school textbook. It had little to no detail, certainly no aviation map.
What the
airport
fuck?
officials understandably had little
They
time to
just
prepare.
condemned this plane.
This was
They
ridiculous.
said, fuck
There
them.
was no way they could
Give 'em
fly
my
to North Korea
child's
using this
homework.
map. Moreover, the North Koreans had no idea they were even coming, a major cause for concern. It's common knowledge among pilots that the airspace above the DMZ.
Well, this is the
is a no-fly
70s. It's
zone,
not like North
with a
Korea could
long-running
shoot it down.
formal
What are they gonna do,
agreement
take
that any
spitballs to
aircraft
it?
entering could be shot down for any reason, with no grounds for redress. If this were to happen, it would surely precipitate an international incident. As such, the pilots tried desperately to make contact with the Pyongyang control
Thanks to
tower,
Tier 1
attempting
Jer.
to warn them of their unique
Hope you're having a good night,
circumstances.
HL2.
Pyongyang, please respond. Pyongyang, this is JA Flight 351. Pyongyang, please respond. Nothing. The pilots frantically warned the hijackers of the potential fiery end they could meet if they were to fly any further, but Tommy insisted they continue. He was steadfast in their revolutionary mission, even proclaiming that North Korea was no threat to them, as he would personally recruit Kim Il-sung to the Japanese Red Army. if
Makes
need be.
sense.
And so, the pilots
Pretty good
had
plan.
no choice. With samurai swords pointing at their necks, and with permission yet to be granted by Pyongyang, Japan Airlines Flight 351 entered the DMZ.
And Kim Il-sung was flying around like Superman.
Moments later, North Korean fighter jets emerged from the clouds.
No,
They
God!
opened fire at the passenger plane.
What the
They
fuck?
had entered North Korean airspace.
Holy shit.
But just like that, it was over.
Oh,
The
they only
fire
had six.
stopped.
They only had 6
The
bullets.
pilots realized, well, it must have been warning fire. At that moment, there was a faint response on the radio. This is Pyongyang. This is Pyongyang. Respond. Respond. It was in English, but in a heavy Korean accent. The pilots, relieved at finally making contact, tried their hardest to explain their predicament to the Pyongyang control tower. This must have sounded quite bizarre to the North Koreans, as nothing like this had ever happened before. But despite the unusual request, after some back and forth, Flight 351 was permitted to land in Pyongyang.
Nice.
It would, however, be closely escorted by the fighter jets. Now, the hijackers were elated. This was what they had hoped for, acceptance from their communist allies. But as the plane continued flying deeper and deeper into the reclusive state, it was becoming quite clear to the rest of those on board, the passengers and crew, that their fate no longer rested in the hands of the hijackers, but the Hermit Kingdom.
Yeah, but they're nice.
At 3:19 p.m.,
They have
Japan
a
Airlines Flight
good
351
history of
touched
being
down
nice.
at Mirim Airport in East Pyongyang, where they were met by a swarm of military personnel. There were North Korean soldiers, policemen, high-ranking officials, but also, surprisingly, sympathetic crowds of civilians holding up welcome signs, as well as a choir of schoolgirls singing North Korean greeting songs, welcoming the hijackers or, in their eyes, defectors.
Fucking celebrities.
Destination. Outside the aircraft, an announcement could be heard, blasting over the loudspeakers. This is the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, presided by the great leader Kim Il-sung. For those who are fighting against Japanese imperialism, we welcome you. This was a somewhat elaborate reception, and a magnificent sight for the student radicals, but for the hostages, it was deeply unsettling. It wasn't long until a North Korean official approached the plane to officially receive the foreign visitors. This was it. Tommy and his men were about to join their communist brethren. Now meanwhile, in a nearby hangar, the Japanese authorities and the CIA were getting ready to launch their rescue mission. It was now or never. All that was needed was for the 9 men to be lured far enough away from the plane by the fake North Korean official. This was what it had all been leading up to. You see, the hijackers had indeed ended up in the Korean capital, but there was just one problem. It was the wrong one. Back in Fukuoka, the Japanese authorities and the CIA failed to recover all the hostages. The negotiations did not go as planned, but there was absolutely no way they were going to let 106 Japanese and American hostages fly right into the heart of North Korea.
This is nuts!
They opted for the Seoul.
This is fucking nuts!
The plane ended up in North Korean airspace.
Death Note
They had
shit.
to think on their feet. Time was ticking. Right. Well,
That is a
if the
trap
plane
card
had to land in
activation and a
Pyongyang,
half for
then they'd
sure.
land in Pyongyang, but on their terms. This was their plan B. With the negotiations over, they sprung into action. First thing, they needed to get the South Koreans on board. If they were going to pull this off, there needed to be exhaustive cooperation between all 3 countries, Japan, the US, and South Korea, something the hijackers could never have imagined. They had less than an hour to get this done. Now, on the plane, the pilots were attempting to navigate to Pyongyang, but they were astounded to discover the map they were given was unusable, a basic line map taken from a junior high school textbook. There was no way they could fly to North Korea with this. As the captain was about to throw the map away, he suddenly notices a handwritten note at the top corner. No aviation map, but tune into frequency 121.5 megacycles. He did as instructed. Not long after entering the DMZ, North Korean fighter jets emerged from the clouds, firing anti-aircraft shells at the passenger plane.
But that was actually
Or at
the
least,
CIA.
That's who those on board thought was firing at them. In reality, this was the South Korean Air Force attempting to fool the hijackers
shit.
into thinking they had now entered North Korean airspace. Having tuned into the frequency 121.5 megacycles, the pilots and the hijackers then received a message from who they thought was the Pyongyang control tower. This is Pyongyang. Respond, respond. Spoken in a heavy Korean accent. This was, however, sent by air traffic control in Seoul. To
This is like the
because
most
of differing
big
accounts of the
brain
situation,
plan
it's still
ever.
unknown to the extent to which the pilots were aware of this ruse. Perhaps they were in the dark just as much as the hijackers, or perhaps they were key coordinators of the plan themselves. Regardless, what we do know is that following the instructions that were received on frequency 121.5 megacycles, the pilots were able to safely direct Flight 351 back across the DMZ, eventually touching down at Gimpo International Airport in Seoul. That was the reason for the rudimentary map, because the Japanese authorities never planned for the pilots to use it at all. They were never going to Pyongyang.
This is
Now
wild.
the countdown was on. The hour was almost up. As the plane touched down on the runway, the South Korean airport officials were frantically putting the finishing touches on their makeshift renovation. You see, the final piece of the deception involved disguising Seoul's Gimpo airport to look like one in Pyongyang. They did this by covering up any South Korean related items and branding, and removing all South Korean flags, replacing them with North Korean flags.
How?
South Korean police
Did
were
they
also
do that
dressed
so
up in
quick?
communist uniforms and North Korean military attire, and random actors performing the role of the sympathetic public held up welcome signs in the hopes of putting the hijackers at ease.
How?
Girls from a nearby school was even cast to sing North Korean greeting songs to add as much authenticity as possible.
This is like the conclusion in a thriller movie or something.
Blasting over the loudspeakers, this is the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, presided by the great leader Kim Il-sung. For those who are fighting against Japanese imperialism, we welcome you. The fake North Korean official approached the plane, greeting the hijackers with a megaphone.
Thanks to the gift sub, Jack.
A shuttle bus to take you, the revolutionary heroes, to meet the great leader and premier Kim Il-sung. The Japanese, American, and South Korean authorities, meanwhile, were waiting in the wings. Vice Minister Yamamura was ready. With the ramp stairs rolled up to the fuselage, the hijackers prepared to disembark. They were riding high. This was what they had been waiting for. After sacrificing everything to the cause, their moment had come. This was a revolutionary victory for the ages. One by one, they made their way to the exit. What they didn't know, though, was that their struggles were far from over. This was only the beginning.
What? How?
Now,
they caught him.
The rest of this incredible story will be covered in part 2.
Well, how is there more?
On YouTube in a few weeks, so make sure
few
your
weeks?
notifications
No!
turned on. But there's actually another video coming out even sooner that you can watch.
What the fuck?
Prequel events. If you want to know all about what led up to the hijacking of Japan Airlines Flight 351, who the mastermind was, why Tamiya was never supposed to be the leader, how the Japanese authorities watched on as the hijackers boarded the plane in Tokyo's Haneda Airport, yep, they knew. Well, you can check out this special.
This is the craziest story ever.
To Nebula. It'll be coming out in April. There's a whole story to be told before they even step foot on the plane. And well, you can also check out there what many are calling my best video ever, the shocking Chinese pork bun murders, my Nebula original show. But warning, it's terrifying.
Alright, I'm fucking excited for the rest of that. That is wild. What a story. Oh, I don't want to spoil anything, but I do want to look up the people. Thanks to the resub.